Now, may I open the floor for questions?
Thank you very much for Professor Mitsuta. It's very similar, the case in Hong Kong and Japan, that the aging population is getting more serious. And recently in Hong Kong is proposing the retirement age to 65 instead of 60. So I want to know what's the case in Japan. Have these ever been considered in the Japanese government? First, or you? Okay, my second question is about the gender role in family and also at workplace. So, for example, have women's voice ever been heard in the society? Whether they are more preferred to work, or whether they want to stay at home and performing traditional Japanese women's role. And also, for example, if women are more educated, of course, they can have more chances at workplace. And I wonder, for example, if they are more independent financially, will this make to the contribution of the recent, the divorce rates being increased? So if that's the case, then it may generate another kind of social problem. In the end, for example, the birth rate may further be decreased in the very soon future. Yeah. So I would like to know your comments.
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, Japanese retirement age was 55 before. So it was increased to 60. And then some companies are going to make it 65. And then the government is encouraging for elderly people to continue to work. Even though they retire from the company, they will be hired as a part-timers in the same place, same company. But one solution is that if the elderly people want to work and they are healthy, and then they should continue to work in some way or the other. I think it's very important that the elderly people have this wisdom and then also this build up, skills and then concerned about the society. And they are the very important, I think, asset to any sectors of the society. But it depends upon the individual differences. Just as I said, 65 and 80 years old, and it depends upon the individuals whether they maintain the ability to contribute to the society or not. So the compulsory probably retirement policy may be reconsidered in Japan. It will be raised to 70 or something like this. Now about women, it has been debated for such a long time in Japan that since women became educated and women earn to make their lives independent possible, and so the women don't want to get married, and then because of the pursuing their careers, their marriage age was delayed, and then the childbirth was lowered down. But I think no women will believe that. I think whether women are educated or not, whether women earn their living or not, if women think that the men will support their lives and support their careers, then I'm quite sure they would get married. And that are the cases that we know. And then the sociologists have presented so many cases in data that how the people get married early and how people delay their marriage. And I think so. It really depends upon the absence of good men who could support the women in pursuing their careers. And then men who really think it's their work, their responsibility to keep their family and to raise the children and to take care of the elderly people. And that's coming in Japan. I think younger generation are very much take it for granted that they will be the part of the domestic, the work, and then so on and so forth. So the women cannot be blamed because they are independent economically, and then they are educated. The marriage is, pushed forward, and they don't have children, and so forth. I think the condition of the workplace, that there is a differential, discriminatory situation that women cannot continue to work with full career aspirations, is one of the factors that women stopped working. And also the child care, elderly care became such a burden on women. And women themselves have their consciousness internalized completely that it is their role to take care of the elderly and then so forth. So it made a tremendous difficulty for women to choose whether they should stay at home to take care of the children or not, continue to work. The mothers used to have bad conscience if they left their children at home, and then the parents left in the remote areas of life and so forth. So it's the cultural consciousness that has to be changed, but it comes very slowly. As you know, the policies cannot change the structures of the ethical codes and then consciousness. But I'm quite sure it's coming to Japan. And Japan, as a forerunner of this aging society, I think it should become the model. It should present a certain kind of model that aging society is not really a problem, but it can create the vitalities and then sustainable development in the future. And that's why I think men should learn from Yamamba. And men should be independent. It's my message.
Professor Jia.
Thank you for a very interesting lecture. I think the question of aging society and the decrease of birth rate in developing societies, I think, is a very complicated question. It's a jigsaw puzzle. There's many things related. One thing, for example, maybe religion can be a problem, because I'm thinking, for example, in Europe, tend to be Protestant countries like Scandinavia, Germany. Those countries tend to have a low birth rate. But France, Italy, do not. We don't here have such a problem, or in Spain, other countries. The other question is, indeed, we already discussed this a little bit. That is the education, particularly for women. Not very long ago, I heard some friends talking about China. China now have more men, actually, than women. But women, particularly educated women, have problems in marriage. Not because they don't want to marry. They want to marry, but it's very difficult for women, particularly higher educated women, have PhDs. PhDs are notorious for women to have problem to find a man. I agree with you. Probably it's a lack of good men. Men probably the less well educated. They didn't want to have.
Very strange phenomenon in China.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist in the world. That
well, that is
with PhD
indeed the question
have problems
now.
In getting
A
married.
problem. So, but nonetheless, I think that's still related to the question of women's education, how to solve that problem. I think with marriage, of course, also that has influence on the birth of children and the family structure. So I don't know whether you have any comment on this.
First of all, statistics shows that in Catholic nations, the birth rate is decreasing. And so it doesn't go along with this very religious code per se. So in France, it's a Catholic society, Catholic nation, but the birth rate dropped so drastically. I think the French way of coping with this is that to give all right to the children who are born out of no married couple. So women can have babies without their husband, and they will be fully socially taken care of and won't have any differential treatment. The children don't. And so Japanese government considers to have much looser the marriage code. But I don't know whether it's coming or not. The men wants to keep this marriage very tight. In the education of women, there is a social, of course, again, the materials that if the conditions are equal, then women want to marry men with higher incomes and higher educations. In other words, if women have PhD, then she wants to marry a man with PhD and so forth. So this has been, as you say, that if men are less educated than women, then women may not want to marry men with a lower education. Then men will be kind of scared of marrying women in PhD. That may be true very much, but isn't it a question of cultural consciousness? I see many, many people who are married to a man, the wife and the woman. The wife is older and the men are younger. The men are not educated, and then women are educated. So I think it's very important for us not to generalize without really looking at the reality. And then we should be able to accept the diverse way of life, and not to control them with the social code or the kind of consciousness we have lived with for a long time. And about having the boys more, I think it's a technological development that you can select the sex of the children. But again, who wants to have babies? I mean, the men are boys, the modern girls. Isn't it again the question of the social consciousness or cultural consciousness? So it will be terrible if there are more men than women. Men will have a terrible problem in getting married. So I think it will create a social instability in the society. So I think what we should do is change our mind, and we should shift the way we look at the situations. And I think this aging society with the decrease of birth rate forces us somewhat to look at the situations in a different ways. And again, it's a global issue as well as gender issue. So we should really have the common policies in a way that the people can move from one country to the other if the service is needed, and then so on and so forth. But at the same time, we should really get over or transcend this very strictly gender-based the structure of the society. Then I think it goes much smoother and nicer. I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure that men are wonderful in taking care of other people. And I think there are many terrible women who are not really, fitted to take care of other people. And it will be a tremendous unhappiness if the elderly care is put those women who don't want to take care of other people. So I think we should really transcend this gender biases that has been put in our consciousness for many, many centuries, particularly in East Asia. Does it answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's still an issue in many countries. So I was wondering if the unequal payment between men and women is response to economics, or is it more a cultural issue?
Equal payment.
Yeah, between men and women, like how women, I don't know in Japan, I didn't remember that part, but like worldwide, women earn in comparison to men less.
Oh, yes.
So is it an economic, like the cycles, like the...
Yes, I
is
think.
It offer and demand, or is it more a cultural issue that women still get paid less?
Well, I think, unfortunately, in the world, still women are earning less, and the poverty rate of women, particularly single women, are much, lower compared to those of men. That's very true. And I think the United States, for example, have the equal pay and equal work, which really makes women to work part-time possible. And I think that's a very good solution. Japan cannot install this equal work, equal payment with all sorts of problems, but we are pushing to do so. The flex time and then work-life balance, and make it possible for women within these present conditions to work in the workforce, work market. So those are the things that we try to be installed in Japan. But unfortunately, I think women do suffer from the discrimination in terms of the payment, if you take payment alone. So the equal pay is very important in Japan, and then the law prohibits to discriminate women's payment, from the men. So to comply with the policy, for the laws, it's the first step. And I think that's coming in Japan. I think if you pay less for women than men, I think you will have a problem. But then the next step is to create the social consciousness of companies that it's good to hire women with equal treatment, that we call social responsibility. So the first is to comply to the law. The second step is social responsibility of all the institutions and companies. And now what we are working is that to show the evidences that the companies which hire women will do better in terms of their business. And I think many companies and many sectors of the government is working to show that the women bring vitality to the companies, and then innovations to the companies. So it is good for the company, for their business, to hire more women, and then treat women equally, and then to open up the path for the careers for women.
Okay, last question. Giving to men.
The world is going for automation. For example, Google is developing the unmanned vehicles, right? If that sort of technology comes to reality in 5 to 10 years, well, many people will be out of the job. So why do we need such a large working force? And if we have such a working population, do we still have vacancies to accommodate all the working force?
Yes, even in the field of care, the technology has been installed very much, such as the developing the tools to take care of the elderly people when they are living away from the families, such as when the older people get up, automatically some computer starts working, and the children who are living in Tokyo will know that the parents woke up and started working, so they know they are safe, and so forth. So the technological development and the use of those technologies is irreversible, and it's true. But what I would like to emphasize is, at present in Japan, there are shortage of personnel in care field. As I said, we predict something like 4 million people is needed in the coming 5 years. And it's not the people who take care of the elderly, but also nurses, and also the rehabilitation personnel, and the management of the care homes. This is a very difficult area. It's new, so you have to know how to take care of the business, which is very new in the world, and also NPOs who work who are very innovative in caring the people and so forth. So there are many business chances, and the shortage of personnel. The personal care is needed, and the technology cannot replace. And I'd like to tell you one thing, that there is a man who developed the NPO that started the system of saving labor, saving the care for the elderly people. For example, suppose I take care of the person who lives near me, and then I save the labor which I used for caring the people. So it's like saving the money. Instead of having a monetary compensation, I save the labor. And so when I need the care, then I can withdraw from that the savings account. Somebody will, help me. Or even I can use this savings to take care of my parents or my relatives. So the money is not the thing that will work, but the labor actually could be saved. So there is lots of innovations going around in providing the care. And that is what is very certain is we do need people, the personnel who work in those areas. That's why we are very serious about the education, educating those people, producing those people. So it might come that the whole technology will take over the laborers in the field, but it may not come in the very near future because there are areas that the personal labor and personal care is very much needed, I think.
Okay, thank you, Professor Mizuda.
Thank you very much for the wonderful opportunities. Thank you.
Professor Wee-Kwa will present Professor Mizuda with a souvenir. Thank you. Colleagues, friends, and a student, thank you all for attending this seminar.